It's looking to the outside world a whole lot different, right? I mean, I started this like 8.5 years ago with the vision of, creating a platform that bridges the disconnect between youth and each other, youth in their community, and youth in industry. So like that's kind of broad. But like the reason really very much so that I'm making a point of that as the emphasis is that, as we spoke about earlier, right? Like the reality is that nobody has the same foundation, right? The level of support that you get is something that we can control as people go through these transitional periods of change. So whether it's a relationship change, a home change, moving around, going to schools, right? So for me, like I've had 20 years of education. I've been to 10 different schools. I had to stop, start, restart, make new friends, you know what I mean? Start new teams, like all of that, a lot, right? And that's part of life. But the reality is that if you don't have the supports at some of these different periods, right? If you don't understand that, making friends within the first 3 months of going into a space is important to you feeling whole, right? And feeling like you want to stay somewhere. Or, if you're not aware of what it feels like to be triggered and what your response is generally like when you're triggered, you end up doing routines and you end up in these spaces where you're on autopilot and people are not the drivers action, based in their own life, right? They're not in the driver's seat. And so for me, it was very much like, that's why I started Infinitus. So I'm like, everybody has limitless potential, right? And that's what the mission is, right? Empowering youth, individuals, and communities to embrace their limitless potential. Because everyone has the skills, the unique insight, the gift. Like it looks different depending on everybody, right? But everyone has these things. And the reality is that more often than not, you don't get to celebrate these things or explore these things because your circle has told you it's unrealistic, or people in your sphere are like, I've never seen that done before. It doesn't make sense. And so if we don't stretch outside of this, if we don't see the bigger picture, if we're not challenged, if we don't get exposure to network or any of these things, we end up missing out. Not because we're making an active choice, but because we're not being supported and we're not learning how we can get, receive, and support ourselves. And so for me, like that's really what it was, right? It's changing the whole the mindset and the attitude, because you can't just say, I want you to do better, be better, go ahead and do that. Or talking at people, right? It's actually being in the spaces. So with us and Infinitus, it really is about, shifting that headspace and providing a framework. So, we do obviously events and training and learning. So whether it's, mentoring and facilitation and some consulting work, dealing with youth, whether it's, in elementary all the way through post-secondary and university and things of that nature, or in community groups, or also dealing with government, right, and community organizations and nonprofits as well as private sector. We're definitely touching on a bunch of different pieces. But the pillars and the core of everything we do, right, is focusing on identity, resiliency, leadership, mental health, right? And there's all that overlap, right? And then you throw leadership on top of that because everybody is a leader on their own way. But again, it looks different. And so, it's building those abilities, whether it's with youth or on teams or as an entrepreneur or an individual or organizations or governments. Like it's being able to leverage the value in the room, in the space already, not recreating the wheel, right? Everybody has different degrees of access to the resources that's her network. And it's figuring out how we can leverage what you do have and what you already have been doing to be able to put you in a space to where you can build your portfolio tangibly, not just having a conversation about let's build your digital entrepreneurship mindset and your lens. What's important to you? Like, what's your end goal? Are you trying to put your moms in a house? Are you trying to get a car? Are you trying to start a family? Like, what are you trying to do? And so what is your North Star? Because being able to have a North Star, being able to have reason and justification for something changes how you perceive what's going on, right? If you have a reason for something, it's no longer suffering. You're able to get through it because it's a reason, it's with purpose, it's the journey. And so that's really a big, piece of the work that we're doing, whether it's with the media or the consulting or the facilitation in the schools or in the government or coaching. Like with, the full range is really about, putting people in the driver's seat and enabling them to understand that there are so many tools in this digital space, right, that you have access to, but you need to be intentional and you need to be focused on putting yourself in the driver's seat, because everybody's North Star, whether you're aware of it or not, there are pieces that pull you you're pulled towards doing something, this work or having these conversations, or pulled away from these groups. And so it's really just being more curious about those things and having more conversations and getting out of your comfort zone. But what does that look like? So, with Infinitus and the programming and the work, it is about creating these spaces that focuses on experiential learning and focuses on, the peer dynamic, to where we're putting people in positions to feel comfortable and to feel confident. And as they build, whether it's digital literacy or, entrepreneurship or any of these pieces, like, they're comfortable, right? No, people don't want to talk about financial literacy or, how to use your phones and stuff like that, because they feel like they should already know the answers. You should already know how to do that, right? But how do you hold a space for people to be curious and ask questions and grow and challenge?